Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we have two special guests on the show. We're joined by Tim Munden, Chief Learning Officer at Unilever, and Paul Farmer, Chief Exec at Mind. Welcome to the show, guys. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Let's start with yourself, Tim. I know you've been on the show before, but for people that don't know, give us listeners a little bit of an intro about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
So I'm, as you say, Chief Learning Officer at Unilever. I've been with Unilever for 25 years last month.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I've loved it. I mean, working in a purpose-driven business is a unique and brilliant thing. And so currently I'm responsible for how do you help our people to have the skills, the leadership that's required, and also the well-being. I look after well-being globally, which brings us to where we are today.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Chief Executive of Mind, a mental health charity. I've been in this role now for just over 12 years, and it's been an extraordinary journey that we've been on as an organisation, thinking about the mental health and well-being of society. And a key part of that for the last 8 years or so has been work that we've been doing around mental health in the workplace.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you guys. As I was speaking to Tim before this show, it's close to my heart personally as well. And I think it's definitely a conversation that we need to have more as well. And especially since I spend every single waking hour speaking to HR leaders all over the world. And this isn't a conversation they bring up with me, which is surprising considering they're normally the guys driving this internally, and it never seems to be something that's top of mind. So I'm really happy that we're having this conversation. So let's start with what is mental health? What is the mental health work gateway? If you can give us some, Paul, some insights. Why was it built? What kind of content's available? Give us some more details.
Sure. Well, we at Mind have been working with a number of organisations for many years, thinking about this issue of workplace mental health. And actually, as you've just said, although it's a really big issue for many people at work, in fact, something like 300,000 people every single year lose their jobs as a result of poor mental health in the UK alone. It's a big issue at work, but people are beginning to understand and think a little bit about this issue. But what we hear time and time again is that people don't really know what to do or where to turn. And so along with 11 partner organisations from the public, private and voluntary sectors, we've created and curated the creation of Mental Health at Work. It's a gateway website. It's designed to be a first stop for anybody who wants to really answer any question that they might have about any issue to do with mental health at work. And we started to have this idea as we were beginning to do this work, but the great opportunity to turn, what was a bit of a dream into a reality was when the Royal Foundation decided that to create the Heads Together campaign, which is a campaign led by the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry. Many of your listeners will have heard about it in the course of the last year. It captured the nation's imagination, I think, in terms of really raising awareness around mental health. And as part of that, funds from the Royal Foundation and its supporters have been invested in making mental health at work a reality. So it now exists at mentalhealth.org.uk.
Fantastic. And I've had a chance to check it out myself. I have downloaded some resources on anxiety, because I do suffer from anxiety and panic myself. And I really found it really helpful. And I love the fact that you have both sides. You have it of, how I can help myself personally, but you also have resources of how for people to help understand how to support someone like myself. And help them out as well. So you're coming at it from both angles, which I loved. Not just, here's the support for you, but for the managers, for the leaders and people around, say this is how you can help support those individuals who are going through that as well. So I found that very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think we recognize that, probably most of us didn't get any mental health education when we were at school.
Yes.
So where's the best place where some of those messages can be delivered? Well, it's probably in the workplace. We all spend far too much of our waking time at work, but it's a really important place where we can have that conversation about mental health. So the purpose of the site is, as you say, both to give kind of direction and support for somebody who's worrying about, they're concerned about how they're feeling, and maybe, you know, how to talk about that to their boss or to the HR team or to somebody they trust. But it's also designed to equip managers with the ability to be able to, if you like, ask that question. I mean, it's actually quite a simple question. It's, are you okay? And, you know, we probably asked that question hundreds of times in the course of an average working couple of months. Normally there's only one answer, which is, yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Please don't ask me any more than that. But we're almost, I think what we're trying to do with this site, and more generally with our work at Mind, is to enable people, you know, to be able to ask that question and be prepared for the answer to be, no, yes, I'm not having a great day today. I'm actually quite anxious. I'm quite concerned about how I'm feeling. And for the person who's kind of, you know, kind of asking that question, for that answer no to be all right. It's actually something that you can then think, oh, okay, well, maybe I can help you. Maybe I can signpost you to a resource or some information that might just make the difference between you struggling at work and finding that, you know, your mental health is so overwhelming that you can't really face working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've definitely experienced that myself, to points where I couldn't even leave my house for a week. I spoke to Tim about this before the show, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't tell my boss. I was too afraid to tell my boss because I didn't think they would understand me. I was almost, there was a bit of ego there as well, is I didn't want to admit that was happening. And I was pretty sure that my leadership team wouldn't understand and support me, which is not a great thing to say, but it was something, it's how I felt at the time. And if anything, what it did is actually built more anxiety for me and caused me more stress, and it kind of escalated even further. So it was just actually making it worse and worse by not actually talking about it and having a conversation about it with those people. It actually made it worse for me. And I kind of had to work my way through that. And I do think that's one of the reasons why I left my previous roles to start this company, is due to some of those stresses as well. So they lost a very good employee, if I don't say so myself.
Yeah.
But by not understanding that and allowing me to be vulnerable and to understand and let me know that, Chris, you know what, that's okay. You take your time and we're going to help you through that as well. But I also think it's not their fault, because again, they've never been educated on how to deal with it either. So they don't know how to do it, especially when I was a sales director and I had 25 staff. If someone came to me with some of these issues, I would have no idea how to help them. And I don't think many people do. So I think it's very important from both perspectives that we educate people on how to do this. So Tim, how did you connect with Paul?
So I think I first actually met Paul in a BBC studio having a conversation one Sunday evening about mental health. And I think that must have been 4 years ago. And I think the conversation has continued because, I mean, Mind obviously has a pivotal role in the UK as a public voice and advocating and providing resources on mental health. Unilever has been trying to do the best we can on this. I think we still have further to go, I have to say, but I think we've been trying to do our best. And I think that these conversations are growing. So I'm hugely encouraged that more people are having the conversation in work and about work. And I want to say, Chris, I'm really impressed by what you've just done in talking about your anxiety. I know probably for the first time in a public place. And
it is actually the first time I've ever spoken to anyone about it. And you're probably like the fourth person I've ever told, Tim. But I felt like I couldn't have this conversation and not say it. Yeah.
Well, I really,
people close to me know until this point. Yeah,
I think that's a big thing, and by the way, when you do that, as I've done myself, when you talk about your own mental health experience, it liberates others to do the same. And particularly when you talk about what it's been like, I've been very blessed. I've worked in a great company, I've had a lot of support. You've had a different experience. And so I think thinking about this from the point of view of HR people listening on this podcast, the question we've got to ask ourselves is, how can we create a space in which people have a line manager who they can tell, How do we create spaces where the signposting to support is as easy as possible? Because then we can avoid the vicious spiral that you experience, leading to you leaving that business as a great person leaving the business, and actually have a place where people stay and they perform and they're brilliant. And in fact, they're more brilliant because they're able to be fully themselves. I think there's a huge shift. I think it's happening. And I think that's the conversation Paul and I and others have been having across the UK. I think we're at a turning point. And I'm hugely excited. And I think the Gateway helps to take great stuff and make it publicly available. Because I know I talk to HR people and they say, yeah, Tim, you work for Unilever. You've got 160,000 employees around the world. You setting this stuff up is easy. Okay, then there's some truth in that. We've got resources, but the fantastic thing is those resources are scalable. You go to the Gateway, the stuff is there.
It's there, yeah.
And what I love about it is that there's things that help you think about where am I as an organization. Things for the HR professional, things for the line manager, and things for the individual. And that's how we have to shape these changes. So I think this is a great moment. And really, this is a resource center for workplaces, I think, around the nation.
Mm-hmm. What's the feedback you've gotten so far, Paul, from people that are using the Gateway?
Yeah, we've been so excited about the responses we've had, Chris. It's been, first of all, we've had tens of thousands of people just coming and looking at it, and we've had tens of thousands of those resources that Tim and you've mentioned downloaded, and that to me is the first test of a site like this. Do people don't just have a look, do they actually take the resources? And the rating that we're currently running, and if you go on the site you'll have a chance to rate it yourself, it's I think it's currently running at 4.9 out of 5, so we're pretty nice. We're pretty excited about that. There's only one way from there, but I think we're really pleased. It's suggesting that where, as Tim says, we're touching a chord. We know that it's often HR teams are the teams where the budgets are tight, where the resources aren't always there, and particularly if you're in a in a small or medium-sized organization with hundreds of different issues going on at any one time. So we're trying just to make it as easy as possible for HR professionals and everybody in a workplace. But in the context of this session, it's a kind of one-stop shop. And I think there's something quite interesting, particularly for HR staff, because it's often the HR team who get the kind of really difficult questions. So for example, one of the resources on the site is some brilliant resources that's been produced by one of the partners, Business in the Community, looking at how do you support staff if there's been a suicide in or by a member of staff. And it's a tragic issue. Mercifully, it won't happen very often inside a workplace, but if it does, you want to make sure that you can get quick access to the best possible support. Equally, there's resources at a local and a regional and a national level, so that if you're wondering about what kind of support you can get if you're running a business in Wales or in Scotland or Northern Ireland or the northwest of England, you can get tailored materials there. So response so far has been really great, but part of this is it's organic. So we want people to share their resources with us. So if people listening have got their own resources that they've developed, like Tim's, and it doesn't matter, we'd love to have a look at it, and we will then build an ever-growing set of resources for people. So at the moment we've got about 160 resources on the site. We've already been inundated with lots of material that we can already start to load up. We're going to carry on doing that. And also, people would like to keep in touch, then there's the opportunity for people to sign up to a regular newsletter, which means that as the site builds with content and material and is regularly updated, you can get access to that very easily and quickly.
Fantastic. Just out of curiosity, are you planning on, or maybe haven't seen it on there, to build a community element?
We're really hoping to start looking now at a phase 2 for this work.
Okay.
So the first phase has really been just to get the platform up and running. The next part of phase 1 are some bespoke materials for free to access materials for people working in small and medium businesses, because we know that's a place where there's particular pressure. And then the next phase, which
got a lot of work to do
next year, is something where we can really start to create spaces for people to be able to share their experiences.
Yeah.
And that I think that's a really good question, because we know that from some of our other work, we run a big digital peer support group, for example, called Ellie Friends, which has a post every 10 seconds from somebody just talking about their own mental distress, anxiety, depression, and many other issues as well. We know that there's a huge need out there for people to be able to share those experiences, but also at a professional level. I think, for an HR professional to have somewhere to be able to say,
exactly, that's what I was thinking.
What can I do? What would you advise doing? Kind of a professional peer network. We're hoping to be able to do that. We do need some funding for that, I should say. But we're kind of hopeful that we'll be able to get funding for a second phase.
I'm glad that that's on the agenda, because I think sometimes you get some incredible resources, but you don't really know how to implement it or to go about actually executing on it. And hearing advice and experience from other people that have been through the same journey is really, really so helpful. And I feel like this is a perfect example where that can even be more impactful, just being able to reach out to a peer or another HR leader or anyone really and say, how did that go? How did that conversation go? I've got this particular issue. How do you approach that? That is, I think we'll really kind of take it to the next level. But you guys have done an incredible job of what you have so far, and it's so easily accessible. So for anyone listening, guys, head over. You can check it out straight away and download the resources right now as well. So Tim, as an employer, from your perspective, what are the key things that we can do sort of immediately to help support our staff with mental health?
So when I think about this, I think about doing 4 things. And I know that sounds a lot, but that you don't have to do much in each, but there's 4 things to think about. First off, think about how you can make sure people have access to support when there's a problem. How can you signpost people to help? That's about training your HR people. There's this assumption that because we're HR people, we're people all know what to do. No, not necessarily.
No, yeah.
So I think making sure that your HR team, even if it's 1 or 2 people, or if it's just you're confident, you know where you're going to signpost somebody who says, I'm feeling anxious or I'm having some kind of problem. What is the place you're going to support them to? That's step 1. Step 2, I think, then is start to think about how you can change the culture. How can you get people talking about mental health? And that's second for me, because don't start encouraging people to talk about the mental health until you've got the support in place. Support is first, then change the culture. How do you change culture? Get the managing director or the leaders or yourself, if you're the HR leader, to start to talk about mental health, either their lived experience or just the importance of it. The statistics speak for themselves. 1 in 4 of us, so when you stand up in front of a company that's 4 or more people big, that there's someone there for whom this will resonate. So that's the second thing. Start to change the culture. The third thing then is start to train. If you're in a company that has line managers, start to help your line managers to have the conversation. Because actually, to be honest, we know that many people don't want to talk to HR. They may have the strongest relationship with their line manager. So try and help your line managers know how to have the conversation. That's not training them to be counselors. Again, it's helping them to ask the question, how are you? Maybe ask the question, how are you again? And then start to be able just to have the skill to unpick a little bit about what's happening there. And again, signpost it on to support. And the reason I feel so passionate about the line managers is, and Paul will correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding from the experts is it is overwhelmingly the best thing to do to keep somebody who's struggling with their mental health working in some form or another. Even if it's just a day a week, keep people in the workplace, because believe it or not, work's good for you.
Yeah.
Work provides social network, provides a sense of achievement.
Mm-hmm.
So just to keep people adjust the work, keep them somehow in work, is such a benefit for that person. Of course, it's a benefit for the company. And the line manager is a key to start that process. And then the fourth thing is, once you've got those in place, start to put things in place that help to prevent, to build people's resilience. So I think there's a neat order there. And the resources, this is the great thing about the Mental Health at Work Gateway. The resources to start to do that are there. So step 1 of learn how to signpost. There are conversation guides and some really great things in the gateway to help you get started. But that's the approach we've been following. 4 things: put in support for people who need it, address the culture, help your line managers, help people to prevent.
Mm-hmm. You made a really good point there, Tim, and I felt that as well, is in terms of the importance of keeping me in the workplace. The hardest times that I've experienced is where naturally when you feel anxiety, and obviously I used to have a lot of panic attacks, is you want to step away and be and stay alone and be reserved and be at home on your own. But it's actually the opposite, as you know, and it gets worse. And the longer I used to stay at home and not be out, is it worse and worse it gets, and it kind of builds and builds and builds, and it's kind of even more pressure that when you then leave the house and try and go back out to socialize, it gets harder. So the more you stay, what I find is the more I stay social and go to work and be around friends, family, and be in social environments, then it actually is the opposite effect. But naturally, when you do get stressed out and you have anxiety, you wanted to stay alone at home and not talk to anyone, which is the worst thing you can do, coming from me, who's someone who's been through it and still going through it as well. So it's a very good point.
Well, we're naturally social animals, aren't we? You know, we like to be around other people, and the workplace often provides us with that. And that's one of the quite interesting dimensions about the way that modern work is changing. So, you know, increasingly people do spend time in flexible workplaces. They work at home more. So we have to be careful to get the balance right, because I think the whole idea of flexible working is hugely beneficial to people with mental health problems. It allows, you know, for example, if you experience panic attacks, then being on the Northern Line at 10 to 9 in the morning is not a good place to be.
Exactly what I said to Tim before the show, and that was one of my triggers. Was on the train, in the packed out train. That was one of the main ones, to be honest. So do not miss the Central Line at all.
Well, isn't it fantastic that that so many employers are able to offer flexible working? That means that people can work at home, or maybe people can vary their hours. And also, this is why the point that Tim makes about being as open as you can be about your own experiences, because from an employer's point of view, you can provide people with reasonable adjustments. There's access to government funding for people with mental health problems, alongside all other disabilities, in the form of access to work, which is a big government fund that hardly ever spends its whole allocation, because we don't really know enough about, it's often not utilized enough. And we can create an environment where people are able to be flexible, but also still able to benefit from work. And I think a really good example of that, it's a resource I know that's on the Gateway, is what you can do in terms of creating a wellness action plan. And this is something that we and many other organizations have done. Initially you used it to support people who were coming back from a period of a time off when you've been unwell. It helps you to be able to describe how you feel, who the people that you want to know about what's happened to you, what kind of working pattern you need to get you back into work. But increasingly, we're using these wellness action plans now, and many other organizations are, for everyone. And you use it as a way of saying to somebody, so, when the pressure's really on, how do you react? How can you support somebody? What kind of help might you need? Maybe what are the signs if I'm beginning to struggle a bit, and what do you want me to do? So, I think when particularly often for HR teams, where HR teams quite often get the things that have gone wrong. This is all about how we, as Tim rightly said, it's all about how we change the culture. It's about how we encourage people to think about this issue, whilst you're still thriving at work, as well as maybe when you're struggling.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point you made there. Not waiting until you're in a situation where then you have to do it. Educating people beforehand. I'll be honest, for many, many years, I didn't associate my anxiety with the word mental health.
Yeah.
It was, when I used the word mental health, I never related myself that I have a mental health issue. I just thought I have these anxiety things now and again. I have a panic attack now and again every few months, and I never ever associated, that's mental health. I need to speak to someone about that. And in some ways I still am. I do think like that, and it's not good. And I know many people feel the same, and they don't want to sort of attach that brand themselves. Oh, I have a mental health issue, because they may feel that people may look at them a different way. And that's definitely how I felt for a long time, until today, literally, until I'm having this conversation with you guys. I didn't tell anyone about it, apart from my close friends and family, because to say that it then becomes real. And you kind of have to admit to yourself that you do have an issue, and that there is a problem that you need to think. As soon as you say that, it becomes real, right?
And that's what we call in our world. We talk about the stigma. And
Yeah, the stigma,
that's the
exactly. That's
stigma.
what I'm trying to say. The stigma
Yeah.
attached to it. Yeah.
So we, we know that, again, there's some resources on the Gateway, on the Mental Health at Work Gateway, from the Time to Change campaign, which has done huge amounts of work to really start to shift the stigma. And I think that's the thing we're all trying to do. And in a way, the workplace is just, it's a reflection of our society, isn't it? For years and years, we've been frightened, very afraid to really talk about this issue of mental health individually and as a society. But now that's really beginning to change, and as we do that, people need help and support. And as we begin to realise the scale of the issue, and also the opportunity to really make a difference to people's lives.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
absolutely.
Tim, before we wrap up, what would be your, for all of the HR leaders out there that are listening to the show, what would your advice be for them? Because I know a lot of them, it's something that they're thinking about, but they perhaps just haven't taken that first step, right? To get started.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. So I think step one, I'd say every organization needs to have some kind of well-being plan. Well-being is the energy of the organization. You're not going to succeed without having people with well-being. And so there is, in my view, several reasons for doing this. Productivity is one, values is the other. It's just the right thing to do. And in an increasingly competitive and fast-changing world, this is only going to become more important. So every HR leader should make sure they have a well-being component of their HR strategy. I think it's a fundamental. Secondly, I think there are resources on the Mental Health at Work Gateway, such as there's a great BITC resource, a model to think about workplace well-being. Because where do you start? Well, if you haven't got one, go to the Gateway, look at the BITC. I think it's called the Work Well model. And you can then start looking at how you need to build a plan. And it doesn't take lots of money. This is a really important thing. It doesn't take lots of money, but you know what? It can save you a lot of money. And it can also help you to be the most attractive employer. And as you said very movingly at the start of this, Chris, you left a company where you didn't feel you could talk about your mental health and weren't going to be supported. And what do HR people want? They want to have the very best people performing at their very best. That's the basic mission. So that's what I'd encourage everyone to do it, and to go and use the Gateway to find the resources. And let's keep this conversation going. One of the shocking things, just to be challenging to us as a profession, I think the statistic is that something like 2 or 3% of people in research, I think you did, Paul, would go and talk to HR. I think it was a very, very small number of people would go and talk to HR. I think we have to take that personally as a profession, and we have to make sure that we're equipped and we equip the line managers to do it. That's what I would say, Chris.
I'm surprised at that figure. I'm shocked, actually.
Do I have that correct, Paul, or am I misquoting the research?
I'm pretty shocked at that, if that's the number.
No, it was a piece of work done by the Royal Foundation, okay. And when they asked people, would you go and talk to HR? I can't remember the exact details of it, but it was something. The figure was frighteningly low. It was 2 to 3%. We in our Mind Workplace Wellbeing Index, we have a slightly larger number of people who do see HR as a really important resource, an important part of the equation. But I think that very low figure is just reflective of the fact that, as you said yourself, people still feel very reluctant to be open about their own experiences. And if you walk into the office with a broken leg, everybody can see it, so you can't really not talk about it. If you walk into the office and you're feeling awful and you've literally plucked up all the courage you've got to be able to just walk in through the door, that's as much as you can probably cope with at that point. And the idea that you're then going to tell people why you are as you are is too much. It's too difficult at that moment. And and we have it's so we know that it's really difficult for people to be able to do that. But as increasingly people are more open about it, more people in organizations, we're beginning to see business leaders be more open about their experiences too. As we start to see that, then we will overcome that stigma, and it'll be okay not to be okay.
Yeah, and so before we wrap up, guys, Paul, where should let us our listeners know where can they learn more about yourselves and check out and if they want to get in contact with you personally as well, what would the best way to do so?
Yep. So the mental health gateway, which we're going to look at, we've been talking about today, is mentalhealthatwork.org.uk. Please also go and visit us on the Mind website. And the easiest way to get in touch with me is probably via Twitter at Paul Farmer Mind. I'm fairly visible and active on that, so or on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic, and same for yourself, Tim.
Yes, I'm LinkedIn's best way to get hold of me, and you can see the film I made about my own experience of post-traumatic stress, and some great conversations have started from there. So you can find me there.
Thanks. Well, look, I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to join us on the show. It's definitely an important topic, and I really want to make sure we continue this conversation. So thanks so much for all the work that you're doing, Paul, and also thank you, Tim, for bringing Paul on the show and contributing to this again. I really, really appreciate it, guys. For everyone listening, head over to hrdealers.com. There you'll find the show notes from the episode. Every single resource that we've mentioned, I'll make sure I go and link that in the description for you guys, as well as the link to the website as well. So you have all of the information that you need. Apart from that, I wish you guys all the best, and until we next speak.
And the same to you, Chris. Thank you very much, and thanks for your courage and honesty today. I really appreciate it. I know many other people will too.
Thanks a lot, Tim.